Hey everyone, it's Jerry at the Fledge. He, him pronouns. Started doing that after we had our every damn day with Ezra and Marshall. So thanks, non-binary. I'm happy to point it out and normalize that. Another episode of Every Damn Day. Today we have our friend Mike Marriott from Opportunity Arts. How you doing today, Mike?
Good, Jerry. How are you?
Are you a pronoun guy? I see.
He,
I don't.
him.
Yeah. Do you put that like on your LinkedIn or anything?
I haven't added it to it yet, but I think it's a good idea going forward to do that. So
Yeah. I never thought I was being insensitive by not doing it, but now I'm questioning whether I was or not. And it certainly doesn't cost me anything to say I'm he, him.
Right. Exactly.
So, yeah. So, I mean, you've been, how long have you been back in Lansing?
So I've been in Lansing now, what is it, September, October, 3 years and a month.
All right. So in that 3 years and a month, I've seen you do a lot of different things, and I've met you, in a lot of different places when we used to be able to go, to the drinking lunch or whatever. Yeah, I just completely lost your video for a second. We still good? Oh, okay. So a lot of people know who Mike Marriott is and what the Opportunity Arts, but it might be in that art circle, right? And then the Love Lansing circle for sure, because I think people love what you're doing, but not everybody knows you yet. So for the sliver that's watching that watch this show, why don't you tell us about you and your projects?
Well, I'm a tap dancer turned arts administrator. And so I worked before moving to Lansing. I worked in New York City in arts administration for a decade, and came out here and started Opportunity Arts, basically off of a problem that I noticed in New York. In that traditional setting there, they have a lot of organizations, and what they do is they'll hire, they'll hire a salaried executive director and development director and marketing director and community engagement director and all these different positions, and then they stipend the artists. And I'm a big believer that without the artist, there is no art. And so we started this company to basically provide those services that a development director, a marketing director, an executive director would do, but provide those services to individual artists as they needed them. So if a dance company is doing 2 or 3 shows a year, it doesn't make sense to hire a full-time marketing director. Take that money that you would be paying that full-time marketing director, put it towards your creative endeavors, and then hire Opportunity Arts to do the promotional pushes that you need as you need them. So that was kind of how we created the whole company. And so Michigan looked like a good place. And so we came here and away we go. So
you moved from New York City to do arts there to come to Lansing, Michigan to do arts here.
Right.
Has anybody said that's backwards?
Yes. I think because, we're raised to believe in a certain thing. And so when you look at New York, it is the arts, it is this arts capital, this arts mecca. And growing up as a tap dancer, it was always, you go to New York, you go to Broadway, that's where you go. With everything changing, even before COVID and everything, we have technology at our fingertips now where you can be anywhere and still produce and create. And, there's advantages that Lansing has that New York can't touch. Cost of living, opportunity to move through the bureaucracy quicker. And so that was kind of a thing too with Lansing, that I looked at it as a mid-sized city of, this is a great spot to do this. Also, Lansing is a place that's geographically perfect for an artist, because if you live in Lansing and you're working here, you can get to Grand Rapids quickly. And but what I mean by quickly is living in New York, you're just always in traffic all the time. So being able to get to Grand Rapids in an hour and 15 minutes, or Kalamazoo in an hour and 45 minutes, or Detroit in 2 hours. Or, and I tell a lot of people this, you know, you can have breakfast in Lansing and happy hour in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
So you have that big city. If you want to do work in that big city, you can do that. And then you can come back here, and the studio space to rent is cheaper. Your apartment rent is cheaper. The cost of living is cheaper. The taxes are cheaper. And so that's kind of, Lansing's almost a Grand Central Station.
Do you feel like it's worked out that way for you too?
Yeah.
I mean, that must have been like a hypothesis when you were coming back and saying, you know, I think this is going to be, you know, less cost, so my margins should be better. And
Yeah.
then that did turn out to be true.
Yep. It turned out to, I mean, trying to produce what we would produce in New York, it's just so much more difficult. Because everything is more expensive, to the point that, like, when we left New York 3 years ago, a gallon of milk was $4. Like, even at that, like, so literally it was to the thing where you come here and, like, I remember when we first moved here, we were taking pictures in Meijer of eggs and milk to send back to our friends in New York. And, you know, they thought they were like, well, Mike and Danny, my wife Danny, they're like, they climbed in their covered wagons and headed west. You know? So that was how we ended up here and all that kind of stuff. So
that's a pretty awesome story. It got me thinking about, does that cost create a barrier for artists in New York? Like I imagine there are millions of artists in New York, right? Like, if there's 10 million people, at least 20% of them are artists. I mean, I don't know if that's true, but, or at least hobbyists or something.
Right. There's 20% doing art. That's for sure.
And yeah, so is there a barrier to a lot of them and their success?
I think there
or their path?
absolutely is. A lot of people don't realize, Jerry, the performers in the subway that you see, that's curated. That's not organic. That's curated through the city of New York. It is designed to look like New York. New York has this kind of, and I love New York. Like, I don't, you know, but New York has this, they want people to still think it's New York of the 70s. You know what I mean? Where it's, and then just performers in the subway, and it's just all natural and happening. But one of the things I saw when I was there is I saw, outside of Lincoln Center, there was a tap dancer tap dancing on a board outside Lincoln Center. And there's not an infrastructure in place for that dancer to get into that building. And that was one of the things where it's like, you can go and you can work and you can do your stuff, but you're up against a much bigger wall. I could go down a whole road of how organizations are funded through grants and who can afford to hire professional grant writers and who can't. And, you know, so.
Yeah, don't go down that route. Let's go down a different route.
I don't want to start a snooze fest.
So, you know, we, in the Fledge, one of our philosophies, one of the things we're trying to battle is that we know this quote and we agree with this, that poverty or genius is lost in poverty. And so genius is lost in barriers that have a dollar associated with it. And you've kind of painted a picture for me where New York City is just filled with those barriers. And all of these genius artists came from all of these small towns from all over the U.S. to come do their thing. And so many of them are getting buried with the bureaucracy or whatever. But Lansing, it frees them up, and the space is here, and there's abundance here, maybe.
Right. It's you know, I've referred to Michigan as the artistic frontier before. You can go to Michigan and there's not any establishment in place. Like, we're almost at an advantage that we're not looked at as a traditional arts city in Lansing or a traditional arts area. And I think that gives us the option and the opportunity, pun intended, to become the creative's capital, where a creative can come here and do what they do and make a living out of Whether you're a hobbyist and you want to do that as a hobby, or or you've decided I want to turn pro and I want to do this professionally.
Yeah. So you are the vice chair of the mayor's Arts and Culture Commission?
Yes,
Is that
as
true?
of last month. So
Yeah. So congratulations on that.
thank you.
Your, I think it's talent and economic arm has invited me in to work on a project with you all.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm amazed at what we talk about or what you guys talk about. I'm a fly on the wall. I feel like sometimes I talk too much or whatever. But tell us about that. Tell us something. Tell us a secret or anything.
Well, so as far as the Mayor's Arts and Culture Commission goes, it's a group of arts thinkers, is what I guess I will call us. And we are working together. It's an advisory committee to the mayor of how can we make the arts in our region, in our city, better, more vibrant. And I think one thing that was important is it was, understanding the importance of having a thriving community of artists. And so that's, for me, it's there's the economic and talent wing, which you're on. There's a bunch of different committees. There's a campus relations committee that is trying to help, build that bridge between the campus and the city. There's public art committee. There's a grants committee, education committee, and it's all just people trying to get together and come up with ideas. I mean, you've been in those meetings too, where, how can we make it a better place for artists to live, and understanding that it's, the performing arts and the visual arts, it's an industry, and how do we help that thrive?
Yeah. It's, I've been to events in the city. I've been watching everybody, trying to virtualize and everything. What you guys did last weekend in the parking structure was pretty amazing. You want to tell us like some results of that?
That was an amazing event. And that doesn't happen with everybody coming together. So Opportunity Arts collaborated with the Artist Umbrella and Downtown Lansing Inc., and then obviously the city of Lansing for the ramp to put that event on. And again, something where we talked about with New York earlier, the hoops and red tape you'd have to go through to make that happen in a city like New York City. A lot of people don't realize that whole thing was planned and executed in 4 weeks. So we went from, hey, we should have some kind of drive-through haunted something that's safe at the beginning of October. And 4 weeks later, there it was. That was, we had an amazing turnout. It was just cars. And the thing that I thought was really cool about it too is to see the families and stuff and little kids come through, and the excitement and the smiles on their faces, and how many of them, because they got to watch adults paint and sing and play music and dance. And how many of those little kids went home and went, I want to pick up a guitar. I want to pick up a paintbrush, and those are all Lansing youth that are going to be able to, that event was special.
Yeah, I think, even the parent in the car would also be thinking, well, these people here are making a living. I'm not going to tell my daughter or my son anymore that they can't be an artist, because I know that happens everywhere.
It does, and it surprises me because, you don't hear that in athletics a lot. You know what I mean? There's nothing but, oh, I'm gonna go to college on a football scholarship. Nobody thinks that's odd. When I was telling people I'm going to college on a dance scholarship, the arts is the only reason I was able to go to college. My family, my dad's a county highway worker for 40 years. We couldn't afford college. I was able to dance and I got a scholarship. And so, that's one of those things where we've talked about the arts, I think, so wrong for so long. But it's an industry just like anything else. If you look around your home, there's art. You cannot wake up in your day and not experience art. It's just you can't do it. If you turn on your TV, art. If you like, it doesn't matter. Like, no matter what you do, you will experience art. And I think artists should take pride in that fact. You know, I think the pandemic definitely leveled the playing field a lot because people were stuck in their homes. Mm-hmm. What do you do? And you watch live streams, you listen to music, you do all these things. And the creative community, it was for them, it was just like, oh, another bump in the road that we have to overcome. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So I almost think the creatives adjusted better.
Well, that's my hypothesis would be that. I think we've talked enough about my stance on the arts and creatives, that our tech economy, our scalable economy, our future that we think is all technology and kind of mathematical and scientific is all sparked with the creative. I mean, without the creative having a different thought, deviating from a norm, you don't get, fancy iPhones or whatever you have.
Right.
So do you have, like, I wanted to ask you, do you have a good definition of what art is?
Wow. I think it varies on, I mean, there's a lot of, I don't know. I wouldn't have a definition for art overall. I would have a definition for different arts and different levels of art, if that makes sense. So, because, you could make a definition for visual arts, but, as we saw in the quarantine and in the lockdown, the pandemic, a lot of those visual artists, like, they became performing artists. Bob Ross, you would think of him as a visual artist, but he was a performing artist.
Right.
Because every time that you would turn on the TV and watch him do his Happy Trees, he was performing for you.
Yeah.
And so it would be very hard for me to define that. I also think the whole idea of art and creativity, defining it almost like locks it into something, and it shouldn't. So yeah, I guess I don't know if that's a right answer, but it's an answer.
I think every answer would be right? Because at the end of the day, you probably get to define it yourself as a human being. And so if you want to call something art, you get to call it art, right? But then you also kind of bring up this point. What do you think about, like, outside artists? I mean, any jackass can pick up a microphone and start and a webcam and start a podcast now, as I'm proving to do. But I have no training. I'm completely outside of this. I feel like I'm failing every day. Complete imposter. And yet it seems to be working for me. But I imagine there's people that go to school for this that would hate that I'm doing this.
Well, and I mean, that there's a lot of people that went to school for stuff and a lot of people that dropped out of school to do something else, you know what I mean? Or to pursue that avenue. For art, I think I've always said to people, I think there's a difference between being an artist and being a professional artist, and what that level of ability is. So for instance, in dance, right? Someone could say that they're a dance teacher, but they also need to know, hey, I can't put this student in point shoes, because if I put them in point shoes and they're not ready, I will be damaging their body. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think in those aspects, I think when you're doing it professionally, there needs to be a level of qualification. But I think that everyone should have access to arts and get to that point where they decide, hey, I want to do this as a living, or I want to do this as, as therapy for myself, or just a release, or it's a Saturday afternoon, I've had a long week of work and I just want to paint. Like there's so, again, why it's so difficult to define.
And I'm going to throw something out there while we're at that point. Okay. If you ever need, not you, but people listening, if you ever need canvases, brushes, paints, whatever, we have a ton at the Fledge, and they're for the community to use. So come do a painting at the Fledge. It'll cost you nothing. because we have that same strategy or same philosophy that you do. Let's get the brushes and the paint in the people's hands and see if they can start a career.
Well, and I
The
think,
go ahead.
well, because it's the thing that you say about that, and then how I think about it from like the arts administration. You know what I mean? Somebody then can come in at the Fledge, paint a piece, create that piece, sell that piece, use that money to buy their own stuff, to make that next piece, to build it up, because all they needed was that opportunity. You know what I mean? And you give people the opportunity to do stuff and see how far they go with it.
Yeah. This our community is strong. I think it's strong because of the arts and because of our diversity. It is the color that is added to our story. But I'll have more on that in a minute. What's something you do every damn day that pushes your mission forward?
So for me, and I think it's a mindset. For me, it's a mindset. My goal is that the term starving artist dies with me. I think that, the fact that starving artists has just become like a normal thing. I don't want that to be a normal thing. And so for me, like, my mission every damn day is to do stuff where we can build an infrastructure that we don't have starving artists. We have thriving artists, and I always use the sports analogy. In the 1960s, players that were on the Green Bay Packers' first Super Bowl team, when that game ended, they went and started their off-season jobs because they didn't make enough money as pro athletes to provide for themselves. They were Super Bowl champions working a second job. That is a fact. That's a thing that happened. We in the arts can go forward and get to that point. If you're playing, because today in our society, we pay athletes millions of dollars to play a game. The arts can get there. And we're at that starting. I feel like we're at that starting point, and we've hit that turn, and you can see it now. So that, for me, leaving it better than I found it. That's my every damn day.
I like it. So yesterday on the show, we had Malik Brown, Metro Malik, Lansing made. And his question, because everyone passes a question forward, is, when does art become business?
Wow, good question. My answer is going to be 1992. I think art becomes business when the artists decide that's what they're going to do. So why I say, for me, 1992, that was my last year that I danced for the pure just enjoyment of dancing. That I did tap dance just because I enjoyed doing it. In junior high and high school, I did dance competitively. So it morphed and became a sport. In college, I went to college on a dance scholarship and then found arts administration. So it morphed and it flipped. But I can remember distinctly, that was the last time that it was just that it went from being a thing that I enjoyed doing and a hobby and fun to this is something else.
Were you a little kid?
Yeah, I was 12. I was 12 years old. So I'm 40.
92, you graduated from high school or something.
99, I graduated from high school. But yeah, 1992, that was my last recital because, like I said, once I got into junior high, it was, for me, dance was sport. So it was competing. Did you win? Yeah. And so it wasn't just about just dancing for pure dance. So that's my answer on that one. And so I think when art becomes business is when the artist decides, okay, I'm going to turn professional. I'm going to do this for more than just the art itself. I'm going to do this for a profession, a side hustle, a career, whatever that is. But that's when it becomes business to me.
I think yesterday when him and I were talking about that, we were talking about like a single piece, like when it went from, my creative little thing to business, but you kind of put a different mindset on it for us because you're really talking about the whole, collection, the whole series, the whole pieces, not just a single piece.
Well, and it's the artists are the one doing it because, we have art in nature, obviously, but you know, there if people aren't coming to the Fledge and getting their canvases and painting, there's no paintings happening.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's I a lot of times I'll talk about the artist as opposed to the art, because if the artists again are in a position where they can thrive, the art will come. Give them an opportunity and get out of their way.
I want to give a quick shout out to Fonda Brewer. I don't know if you've met her yet, but she seems to be everywhere in the entrepreneurial space these days. Trustee from Delta Township, and she has said brilliant idea at least a couple times. Great point. So she's digging your interview and happy there's not a huge bureaucracy here. So yeah. And I also have to give another shout out to the YouTube channel, That Lady, Miss Betty. Very touching stories and a journey with Alzheimer's or dementia, if you will. So check out both these wonderful people.
Awesome.
Let's go to the question for Allison Spooner, who you helped me get on the show. So you've helped me with several people, I think, now.
Yeah. We have a couple different artists that are Opportunity Arts affiliates. They're affiliated with us. Allison Spooner's one of them. Mila Lynn, Sarah Wallace. Yeah. So
I think we got some more coming, but I can't remember who they are. But we'll figure that out.
Awesome.
So tomorrow, Allison, what question can I pass on to her from you?
So I guess I'll kind of piggyback on the, when does art become business? When did she decide that being a writer was something that she wanted to do for her career? So when was that? When was it a progressional thing, or was it on this date? Like, does she have that? When did she decide that being a writer, because she's phenomenal. When did she decide that being a writer was what she wanted to do?
Okay, I will definitely pass that on to her, but I'm going to kind of boomerang it back to you too, but I'm going to do it different than what we said earlier.
Okay.
One is, when did dancing, because I bet you dancing started, right? And that was going to be the career.
Yep.
And then you had another phase transition, and that was going to be the career. Can you tell us about those 2 points?
Yep. So like I said, 92 is when dance became a thing that became competitive, and that was going to be how I went to college. And then in college, when I got into college, there wasn't the competitive aspect anymore. There was the performing aspect of dance, but I missed competing, because dance was my sport. Like, I played sports too in high school, but wasn't talented enough to go to college to play sports. So dance was my sport. And when I got into college, there wasn't that competitive aspect. And then I discovered arts administration, and it was, did you get the grant? Did you sell out the show? Did your client get booked over another client for an engagement? And suddenly there were those competitive measurables again that fed I just like to compete. And it was one of those things where that fed my competitive nature, and I could compete either against myself or others, or however that worked. But that's what kind of drew me towards arts administration. Even in the show last week, like, how many cars came out, and was it, like, those are those things. I love those numbers. And so that kind of, I saw in arts administration, I can do both. I can have my performing and my competitive needs filled.
So, do you know what like a Myers-Briggs personality type is? Like these INTPs and ESTJs and
I've heard about it. I've never done it.
There's I think most are the last of the 4 letters is either a P or a J, and one is kind of a perception and one is judgmental. So perception is kind of, you have a vision. Once you see something can be done, you kind of lose interest in it. But if you're more judgmental, you're more like, oh, you've got to have these 6 things done, and when those 6 things are done, it is done. So they're kind of opposite in that way. Where do you think you are in that? Do you mix those 2 up?
I'm not sure. I would think I would lean towards the latter. Because I'm one of those, like, I don't know, I grew up as a Detroit Pistons fan, so the game against the Celtics where they lost with 2 seconds left and they shouldn't have lost. So I'm always like, is the clock at 0? So I don't want to really celebrate anything until, it's over and it's done and there's no flag. Being a Detroit sports fan, you want to wait. Like, did we win? Yeah, we won. All right. So I guess
it happened the flip side to the Lions on Sunday, huh?
Yes, my phone exploded. I knew something was up when my brother and my father, my brother texted me and my dad called me, and I was like, "What happened?" Like, because I didn't see it live, and I was like, "What happened?" But yeah, it was nice that the Lions were on the right end of it this time.
Yeah. Where were you born?
So I was born in Peoria, Illinois, originally. The tie to Michigan. It's funny we brought up the Lions. So my grandfather was born in Owasso. And then he moved to Illinois. My dad was born in Illinois. I was born in Illinois. So people ask me, do you have any family in Michigan? And I say yes, and they're all buried in the ground in Owasso. But my great-great-great-grandfather came to Michigan in 1833. And so when it was still the territory of Michigan. And so that's kind of the tie. But my grandfather raised my dad to be a Lions fan. He raised me to be a Lions fan. My wife and I came out for a Thanksgiving Day game, and we fell in love with Michigan. And that's where that hypothesis came in of, we were looking at Detroit, looking at Lansing, looking at different stuff. And we were like, if we're in Lansing, we can be in Grand Rapids. We can be in Kalamazoo. We can be in Traverse City. We can be in Detroit, Chicago.
All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So let me just do a little quick business for the Fledge. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, please. Every damn day airs every damn day at 2 p.m. We are now doing a Friday, Sunday kind of split with 99 Problems, but a pitch ain't one. So coming up on Sunday at 3 p.m. is the next 99 Problems. And we've started a new series called 10,000 Fledges, where we talk about how to build a fledge for yourself. Yeah, real arrogant, I think, sometimes. But loved having you on the show. I always ask the guests to take us out. What would you like to take us out with?
Well, I guess, I'll shameless plug our stuff too. opportunityarts.org. Come check that out. Come check out our affiliates, the artists that are working here, in Lansing, and immerse yourself. If you're not familiar with what we have as an art scene in Lansing, get familiar with it. We are the creatives capital. With all due respect to the other 49 state capitals, we're the creatives capital. No city, no state capital has the amount of artistic talent per capita that we have, period.
And I'm going to be a little stronger than that and say, quit buying that bullshit on Amazon that you don't need, and get out there and buy a piece of art from a local artist, because one of these fools is going to blow up, and that's going to be worth about 50 grand someday, and you're going to be kicking yourself. And
even if it doesn't blow up and you purchase from a local artist, you get a one of a kind.
And you keep the money.
Buying art from a Meijer or a Walmart's like buying a steak at Waffle House. Don't.
Yeah.
Don't
do that bullshit.
Get a one of a kind from somebody, and you get to meet the artist. Too.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. It's cool.
Yeah, I'm sorry I said about blowing it up. But you do keep the dollars in the community. You're not giving them to Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and all those fools. So, Mike, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Thanks for being so supportive and kind to me and the Fledge. I love what you're doing for our community. As our community gets stronger, our problems will start to take care of themselves, and we'll take care of each other a lot more. So love you a lot. Thank you so much, and see you later. Bye-bye.